Sadly, today Donald Trump and the administration of billionaires, crackpots, and ice brigades have taken over. We have a king and his court and his beige henchmen, and making us less safe with their love of other kings and dictators and the likes of Putin and Netanyahu and Kim Jong-un of the world.
Yes, the very mediocre actor Mark Ruffalo at the No Kings rally over the weekend. The No Kings, because, they don't want kings. The No Kings rally. President Trump put out a funny tweet about that yesterday. Hey, it worked. I wasn't taken over by a king. I'm still your president. And that guy, Mark Ruffalo, is... I've never acted in my life. Day one, I'd be a better actor than him. Show up on a set, I'd be a better actor than he is. Most people would be. The No Kings rally. Of course, the Democrats at CNN, for example, in 2012, calling for Barack Obama to be the king. CNN. By the way, happy Tuesday to you and welcome back once again. We hopefully remain at 888-630-9625. We have been having some technical difficulties. Our very capable engineering staff has been made aware, and they're hard at work trying to fix our technical difficulties since it's a talk radio program and all of that. But let me get back to this. I got the Chinese tampering in our 2020 presidential election, which was won by Joe Biden, I believe in large part due to mail-in ballots. Is that true, Michael? During that the Democrats dominated the mail-in ballots in 2020, I think that is true. And the Chinese communists, they were apparently involved in ginning up a lot of mail-in ballots for Joe Biden. CNN and the New York Times don't care. They're not looking into it because they're not in the news business. They're not even curious people. But never mind that. I want to get back to the Chinese thing in a minute. But right now, they had this guy who's a lefty, and he thinks he's funny. Dean Obadiah wrote on CNN's website in 2012, in the middle of Barack Obama's presidency, because they worship him. They think he can slow the rise of the oceans. He is a godlike deity to the Democrats. Liberals want Obama to be a king, not a president, says Dean Obadiah on CNN, the CNN headline there. And can liberals ever be happy, he begins? I can answer that, Dean. The answer is no. They like firebombing things and blowing things up, but that still doesn't make them happy. I keep asking myself this question, he said, as I hear an increasing number complaining about President Obama. How dare they? There seems to be a Greek chorus of liberal whining. I'm disappointed by him. I expected more. I thought he would be different. Now, earlier this week, he said Jackson Brown complained, 2008 Barack Obama supporter, lamented that President Obama is just as beholden to the people who put him in office as any of the Republicans would be. That's, oh, no. I always get my political guidance from Jackson Brown, his Maserati does 185, something like that. But Matt Damon, he cites Matt Damon, and John Cusack. Again, Democrats, they don't really know who to turn to when it comes to learning. Learning is not their thing. A new Gallup poll released this week in 2012 found that President Obama's support among liberals was at its lowest point in 7 months, although it's still a solid majority of 70%, because they had like 104% because they're a cult, very, very cult-like, and they literally did think that he could slow the rise of the oceans by the wave of his hand. The thing is, this guy goes on, and he says that there is a bit of a problem. Barack Obama is not a king. He's the president of the United States. For those who may have forgotten the Schoolhouse Rock cartoon about how a bill becomes a law, Congress needs to first pass a bill before he has any chance of making it law. Our founding fathers, he's going on, and all this stuff, first set up a government structure requires the president to engage, had to explain how it works. President Obama is required to navigate through myriad vested interests and exercises going on and on. Thus, as opposed to a king, a president has to engage in activity that some on the left view as a dirty word. That wicked word is compromise. And this guy's supposed to be a comedian of some sort, but isn't it amazing? This guy is going on and on about how what liberals really want is a king and not an elected president. To me, he says, the liberals, who are so very disappointed with President Obama, had either unrealistic expectations for him. You got to make excuses because, the Democrats, just amazing stuff. These people are really demented, and they've wanted a king all along because they love the state. And a king gives the state total authority. And that is what the left demands. That's why every left-wing country is a dictatorship everywhere in the world. He says, to me, liberals who are so very disappointed with President Obama had unrealistic expectations for him, viewing him as a messianic figure who would magically solve all of our nation's woes, or simply refuse to grasp the reality of our American political system. Well, that's true, too. That's why they firebomb everything, especially the Jews. Have you noticed that? In either case, the answer is the problem is not Obama, it's you. Isn't it amazing? Well, Barack Obama may be far from perfect, and I, too, have been disappointed with some of his decisions. I certainly prefer him to a king. This is the CNN article. It's clear that many liberals speaking out don't want a president, they want a king, albeit a liberal king. Oxymoronic though that may be, they get their information from Hollywood for the most part. But still a king, he says, who would be unrestrained by Congress as well as the checks and balances enshrined in our Constitution. And this is CNN, but didn't they just have their No Kings rally over there? And liberals are telling us now that there were 8 million people protesting across, this is what they're saying, across the country. And that the President Trump rally on the Mall with the 250th anniversary, the birthday of the U.S. Army and the parade, a liberal actually told me yesterday, there were 8,000 people there. There were way over 100,000 for sure, maybe a couple 100,000. I was there myself. The liberal that told me this was not there. And liberalism is a mental illness. It truly is. Just amazing. Like the Coast Guard officer and sharpshooter who's now been arrested for plotting to assassinate President Trump. And apparently the FBI knew about him for 4 years during Biden, but didn't do anything about it because Democrats, isn't that amazing? Now, let me get to the next big story, because this is a big story. I just thought the liberals want Obama to be a king, not a president. Pretty funny headline on CNN from 2012, given they just had a No Kings rally over the weekend.
It's good to be the king.
It is good to be the king. Now, the story breaking all over the place today. FBI delivers intel to Congress on alleged Chinese plot to interfere in 2020 election. FBI Director Kash Patel forked over a trove of documents to Congress detailing an alleged Chinese campaign to meddle in the 2020 election that involved thousands of bogus U.S. driver's licenses. I think every teenager, every college student now has a really good fake ID if they want to get into bars, right? Because now on the internet, thanks to the internet, you can get really incredible, great fake IDs. A lot of people had fake IDs even before the internet without getting into particulars. But now the internet creates, and the Chinese certainly know how to make fake IDs, fake driver's licenses. They've been smuggling in tens of thousands of Chinese across our southern border during the Biden years. But listen to this, back to the New York Post now. Precise details about the alleged effort are murky, but a confidential source alleged the Chinese, the communists, planned to use those licenses for thousands of mail-in votes to benefit former President Joe Biden. A spokesperson for the FBI Hunt Show explained to the New York Post. Authorities had caught wind of the alleged plot around August of 2020. August of 2020, before the presidential election, and the FBI had caught wind of the Chinese plot, and we never heard anything about it for almost 5 years. But intelligence reports on it were recalled for reasons that aren't fully clear. Well, because, I have to check on the permanent bureaucracy there in the deep state. The spokesperson added, U.S. Customs and Border Protection seized almost 20,000 fake licenses around that time. Biden won the swing states of Arizona and Georgia by more than 10,000 and 12,000 votes, respectively. So he won Arizona, a border state, by a margin of 10,000 votes, and the Chinese were putting out tens of thousands of driver's licenses to get the mail-in ballots, and Joe Biden won a couple of key states and became president. And Trump's margin of defeat in Wisconsin was more than 20,000 votes. 20,000 votes. Kash Patel declassified the intelligence report and sent it over to Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley, the Iowa Republican, for additional vetting. The FBI has located documents which detail alarming allegations related to the 2020 U.S. election, including allegations of interference by the CCP, Kash Patel revealed on X. That's your, Chinese Communist Party, the Communist Party in Communist China. I have immediately declassified the material and turned the documents over to the Chairman Grassley, for further review. Anytime you hand it over to Congress, it's considered to be public information because Congress always leaks everything. Senator Grassley had raised concerns that the intelligence wasn't fully probed. Really, how many decades do you guys need to look into this stuff? Despite evidence of the bogus U.S. driver's licenses, and pushed for the Bureau to revisit the matter. Thanks to the oversight work and partnership of Chairman Grassley, the FBI continues to provide unprecedented transparency at the People's Bureau, Kash Patel told Just the News, John Solomon's great organization, which first reported his story. To that end, we have located documents Chairman Grassley requested. Specifically, these include allegations of plans from the CCP to manufacture fake driver's licenses and ship them to the United States for the purpose of facilitating fraudulent mail-in ballots. Allegations which, while substantiated, were abruptly recalled and never disclosed to the public. Well, that sounds like the Biden administration and the permanent bureaucrats at the FBI. I got to tell you, I don't think most people should go to prison for almost anything, but, killing people and guns and things like that. But these people should actually go to prison. If you are concealing from the American people information about the Chinese communists engaged in a large-scale presidential vote fraud scheme, and you guys keep it a secret from us, and it's buried half a decade later now, somebody should get a serious rap across the knuckles. A somewhat new confidential source had tipped off authorities to the plot. To the extent to which the FBI took any steps to counter the scheme at this time, not fully clear. Looks like the FBI didn't really look into it. Aren't they something? How can that be? And Just the News breaking the story, their ties to Capitol Hill and Washington, D.C., good for them. Kind of a big deal, stealing presidential elections. But the Democrat Party, and that means the New York Times and CNN, they're happy because Biden won, and he was severely brain damaged. But so are most of them. So it, hand, meat, glove. You know that the big wireless companies are pulling over a big one on us. The time to switch to Consumer Cellular is right now. Listen, I switched to Consumer Cellular. Now I get the same fast, reliable, nationwide, big wireless coverage without the big wireless money associated with the bills that they send you. But it's not just about saving money on my phone bill every month. It's about not being used and abused by the big cell phone companies. Do you even know how much data you use every month? You know that most people over the age of 50 use less than 8 gigs of data every month, but big wireless, they want to shove you into an unlimited plan and charge you a lot of money because they need you to cover the cost of people that are 20 years old and use 10 times as much data as you do every month. It's a little redistribution of wealth scheme. But Consumer Cellular sets you up with a service and a phone as they did with me, and it's incredibly easy to switch. Just call and talk to an actual person, not a bot, based right here in the United States, not on a space platform. Real human beings, imagine that, who are helpful. It only takes about 20 minutes. So give them a call and make the switch today to Consumer Cellular. Give them a call at 1-800-760-0702. That's 1-800-760-0702. Yes, indeed. Yeah, so the Chinese communists and the FBI covering it up. And the Democrats. Gee, I wonder why. Because the documents say that the communists wanted to help Biden and the Democrats, and then Biden and the Democrats won. Maybe it's just a coincidence.
China is going to eat our lunch? Come on, man. They're not bad folks, but guess what? They're not a competition for us.
Chris here with a list of things that none of us should trust. The Washington Post, the New York Times, anything on CNN. Here's a list of things that I do trust. The Washington Times. Support real journalism for just $1 a week at washingtontimes.com/Chris. And a woman accused of murdering her boyfriend, a police officer, being cheered by a crowd of Democrats outside the courthouse yesterday. I've got that for you. They love murder. They're Democrats. All right, let's go to the telephones. My gosh, look at that time. Look what I've done to the clock. You know what? I don't want to give somebody 30 seconds. So let's hit pause, and I'll go to the phones since we've been having technical difficulties today. But this, do you have the screaming, cheering? Because we can play that right now. Karen Reed is her name, on trial, a retrial, for allegedly running over, murdering, and fleeing the scene of her boyfriend, police officers' killing. And when she was walking out of the courthouse yesterday with her lawyers, and they're doing a Satan symbol, this is what we got. Got a crowd of mostly women outside cheering her when she walks by. She's accused of a brutal murder. The Democrats love Luigi Mangione. They love Iran and Hamas. They love murder, don't they? They love MS-13. And I want to get to the telephones in just a moment, but I was sharing with you the story that started at Just the News, John Solomon's great outfit. Now, the New York Post has the story. The FBI delivers intelligence to Congress on alleged Chinese plot to interfere in 2020 presidential election, the election, right? And it's kind of fascinating because they've got a link in the New York Post story to another story from 2020, July 18th of 2020. Joe Biden says Russians are trying to meddle in 2020 election. Now, again, this is 2020, July, middle of the year, election year. Joe Biden says the Russians are trying to meddle in the 2020 election. They're Russians, they're communists, right? And so you would expect that because that's what communists do. They destroy everything. And the Democrat Party is, they're our version of communists now because they're the left. They're the real left. But the fascinating story about the Chinese producing tens of thousands of American driver's licenses, which can then be used to get mail-in ballots by the tens of thousands, and you look at the margins of victory in key states without which Joe Biden would not have become president, like Arizona and Nevada, and so on. The margins are 10,000 votes here and 20,000 votes there, and that's kind of fascinating. But the Joe Biden that year is saying the Russians, maybe they should have paid millions of dollars to the Biden family like the Chinese did, because remember Joe Biden brought his crackhead son Hunter, the stripper knocker-upper, paternity denier. Hunter Biden kicked out of the Navy for his multiple cocaine violations, and brought Hunter to China, and then they lied about him not having business meetings in China when he did have business meetings in China. And then we learned through congressional investigation, the Biden family got millions of dollars from communist China. And then Joe Biden is saying, oh, yeah, the Russians are trying to meddle in the 2020 election. Now we learn that the FBI had reason to believe that the Chinese were literally meddling, not maybe, not hypothetically, but the Chinese meddling in the 2020 election. And then you may recall, as Michael Piercy did today, that in 2018, while Donald Trump was in his first term as president of the United States, he did an interview, inexplicably, with CBS News 60 Minutes and Leslie Stahl. And President Trump they were hammering the Democrat Party talking point because they're still trying to sell Russian collusion. Trump is colluding with Russia, and Russia is tampering in our election to get Donald Trump elected to the presidency. There was never any evidence of that. And it turns out that there was intelligence that the Chinese were tampering in order to get Joe Biden elected. But Leslie Stahl, didn't know anything about it because the FBI was keeping it a secret, but certainly didn't come out. And listen to this exchange between Leslie Stahl, CBS 60 Minutes, in 2018 with then President Trump.
Do you believe that the Russians interfered in the 2016 election?
Well, they meddled, but I think China meddled too.
But
and
why
I think
do you say China meddled too?
And you want to know something?
Why do you say China? Why don't you just say the Russians meddled?
Because I think China meddled also. And I think, frankly, China is a bigger problem.
You're diverting the whole Russian thing.
I'm not doing anything. I'm saying Russia, but I'm also saying China.
The Democrat Party talking point is Russia collusion, Russia's meddling. They never produced a shred of evidence that this was happening. And now here's President Trump once again. His gut instincts are better than most, I think it would be fair to say. And then there's another crazy fun fact that is quite often overlooked. If you look at the number of people that voted in our elections from 2004, 2008, 2012, 16, and 20, and 24. Listen to this. The number in 2004, 124 million people voted. 2008, Barack Obama won, 129 million people. 2012, 126 million people. 2016, when Donald Trump won, 128 million people. And then in 2020, when Joe Biden won, 155 million people. And in 2024, back to 129 million people. So how are we in the 120 million range in every election, except 2020, where we have 155 million votes? It's an extraordinarily large number of votes, outsized number of perfectly inconsistent with the surrounding presidential elections, which are more like 120 million to 130 million. And suddenly Joe Biden unexpectedly wins, and we got 155 million votes, and we learned 5 years later that the FBI knew that the Chinese were manufacturing driver's licenses to get mail-in ballots, and then the margins of victory in key states are in the 10,000 vote range. How can that be? Boy, suddenly we got 25 million more votes in one election, the 2020 election, where Joe Biden won and Donald Trump lost, and the Chinese, we learned 5 years later, were meddling in our election. Isn't that fascinating? Our government, our media, our FBI. I'm beginning to think we shouldn't trust government. Wait a minute. All right, Michael, let's go to the telephones. I wanted to share all that with you. And the people cheering the alleged killer lady who allegedly ran over her police officer. Boy, isn't that amazing? The Democrat Party. I want to hear that again because we're kind of in a hurry. So here's and this is completely berserk. The Democrats got this woman, Karen Reed, on trial. Second full day of deliberations and the retrial. It's a retrial now for Karen Reed, who allegedly ran over her police officer boyfriend, murdered him, and then sped off. And as she's leaving the court yesterday, a passel of Democrat women are out there just like they're all cheering Luigi Mangione, who murdered the CEO for no reason on the sidewalks of New York. And the lawyer is waving them up, and they're both doing extending like their hook'em horns or something like, but they extend their index finger, their right hand index finger and little finger, and stick their thumbs out. It's like their after-school Satan club, and they're sending the woman and her lawyer, to the crowds that are cheering her outside. Why are Democrats cheering murderers every time you look up? Huh. Let's go back to the telephones, Michael. Let's try this again. Let's go to Greg calling from Rockville, Maryland. Gregory, you are on the Chris Plante Show at long last.
Hey, Chris, thanks for taking my call.
Hey, there you are. Outstanding. Thank you for being so patient.
Always for you, sir. I just wanted to say, I was following up on your call with the lady from Iran. I have some extended family and on my mom's side from Iran, and I think people should realize just how corrupt it is, and that's why the government there is failing to even protect its cities, and why Israel has, dominance in the air. It's a very corrupt country. I mean, beyond just the theocracy and the kind of insane mullahs, like everything there is for sale. That's why Israel's able to bribe and figure out basically figure out where these guys are, where they sleep, where they live, because they can just bribe people. You can bribe people for almost anything. The people are also very desperate. Chicken and beef are luxury items. Inflation runs, a reported 70-80% annually. It's probably worse than that. The central bank there has gone crazy with the money printing, and they don't really have any, their domestic industries are mostly nationalized, but they're terribly managed, very similar to like Venezuela. It's a country that has tons of gas and oil, but they don't even extract and do much with it. And then they have run out of water as well. They've basically dried up a major lake in the western part of the country. So it's really sad because it could be a great country. Basically even with a semi-corrupt and semi-stable government, it could be on par with like India, and it has a tremendous amount of human capital. But the corruption is just endemic right now, and that's why the regime is failing and will fail at some point. If this doesn't topple it, I'm pretty confident it'll topple very soon. But yeah, just love hearing about you. Love hearing the show, and keep up the great work.
Well, I'm very happy that you got through on your second try, and I appreciate your patience. And so your mother is your mother's family, at least, is from Iran, and she has family there that she keeps in touch with. Hello. No kidding, he dropped. How crazy. But talking about the corruption, and it's true, certainly the corruption in Iran is legend. And Greg talking about how Israel can bribe people inside of Iran to find out where the senior military leadership is located. Hey, where is he going to be tonight? And it's true, a little money goes a long way. It's the land of intrigue. It's the Orient. It's the land of mystery. It's the land of Humphrey Bogart and Sidney Greenstreet and Peter Lorre. And it's true that money goes a long way in places like that. It's also true that Israel has been targeting successfully, according to all accounts, targeting the senior military leadership in Iran. And in fact, they're newly appointed. They're brand new because their military chief of staff, the equivalent of the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, was killed by Israel in a strike targeting him several days ago now. And they appointed a new guy whose name was Ali Shadmani. Ali Shadmani was appointed the new chief of staff, the wartime chief of staff. And then He didn't last long. He didn't last more than a day or two as the newly appointed chief of staff, again, the equivalent of the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And suddenly he's dead, too. And there were a couple of Israelis on television in Israel last night on local, the American news this morning on television. And these two Israelis sitting there saying, well, gee, I don't know if the Ayatollahs offer you the job as chief of staff, maybe you want to think long and hard about taking that job because it's a dangerous position. I got to say, the guy was explaining this, the Israeli was explaining this, and the guy next to him was laughing. The other Israeli military guy sitting next to him was literally chuckling while he was saying, you know, if they offer you this job, you might want to think about it long and hard. You might want to think twice about that, as it might not be the best job when it comes to longevity. Longevity. And there are more. I think there are 5 more senior military leaders that have been killed in targeted strikes just in the last 2 days. And it's true, this was like being the most dangerous job in the world for years was being the number 2 guy at Al-Qaeda before we could find Osama bin Laden in Abbottabad in Costellostan. They would find the number 2 Al-Qaeda guy everywhere. We, the United States government, military, and intelligence, would find the number 2 guy in Al-Qaeda, and he'd get the whack put on him every time. Boom, boom, boom. Not a good job to have. Not a lot of longevity in that job. And it's the same thing now with the senior, and this is fascinating because they are not currently targeting civilian leadership in the Iranian government, just the uniformed military leadership in the Iranian government and the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, and which a lot of people in the media call the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. It is the Islamic Revolutionary Guard. It's an important word, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. And if you're one of the leaders in Iran's military or the IRGC, you probably should think about an early retirement because that might be best for your longevity. Longevity, I say. All right, let's go back to the telephones, and then I want to get to President Trump and lots of good stuff, lots of stuff going on in the world. Let's go to Rachel, who called back again also. Let's go to Rachel calling from Clark County, Virginia. Rachel, you're on the Chris Plante Show.
Now, you know, I will always call back for you, Chris.
Thank you very much. Very kind.
So, hear me out. I wanted to say, as far as this whole no kings thing, I would like to make a point that Biden was actually a king. Hear me out. Biden, the king, was a ceremonial position, right? Ceremonial. The parliament are the ones who make the laws, a.k.a. his aides and his family members using the auto pen. Biden was simply a ceremonial president. And this is also coming from a group of people who anointed Kamala, did not give the people the choice, from the party who told us to go inside and lock ourselves up and would harass us and threaten things on us if we didn't take, you know, a experimental vaccine. So I really just don't see how Trump is a king, but yet all these, you know, the Democrats do all these things, and they're not. They ran it like a monarchy. Very interesting. I love you, and you summed it up very well.
You're absolutely right, and it's true. The left, they see the state as being the king, the government as being the king. They locked us all down for years. They took kids out of school. They sacrifice 1 million children a year and harvest their organs. That's rather monarchical. They circumvent Congress at every turn. Barack Obama did, and Joe Biden did. They don't need Congress. They just did they governed by fiat, by executive order, by signature, and by pen. You're absolutely right. They locked all of these people up. Quite fascinating. And of course, Barack Obama, and I read the Obadiah piece on CNN from years ago that the Democrats want Barack Obama to be a king. And, you know, I've got to say, Rachel, that's because the left they are really the authoritarian people living among us because they're not liberals. They're the left. And the left runs every dictatorship on the planet Earth today, pretty much. And they love dictatorial authority. Lefties everywhere in the world have always loved dictatorial authority. And now the Democrat Party here, they are the left. Rachel, well said.
And they also...
Go ahead.
Thank you, sir. And just a quick reminder, they also ignored the primaries, the whole primary process. They did it to Bernie Sanders. They indeed are the ones who are running, like I said, a monarchy with a little splash of dictatorship.
You are 100% right, and you're right. I should have picked up. And then Kamala Harris didn't go through the primary process. Bernie Sanders was kicked to the curb because they didn't want him. Very dictatorial, very authoritarian, very Hugo Chavez, very Castro brothers, who they love, the Castro brothers and beyond. Rachel, beautiful call. Very well said. I thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
You bet. You know, a recent bombshell report revealed that the abortion pill, Democrats love that, literally 10 times more dangerous than the FDI had originally claimed, with 11% of women experiencing serious adverse effects, medical effects. Horrifyingly, it's also reported that the abortion pill accounts for more than 60% of abortions in the United States, and with the average of over 1 million babies being aborted every year in the U.S., that's 60,000 women who could be harmed by the abortion pill this year alone. I'm talking about really often permanent damage. This is what they call health care, as you know. Now, let me tell you what real health care looks like. Preborn's network of clinics across the country helped to save more than 67,000 unborn babies last year. Once a woman sees her baby in an ultrasound, hears the heartbeat, sees the movement, waving, curling fingers, blinking, her baby's chance of living a long and happy life typically doubles. And one ultrasound is just 28 American dollars. $140 helps to rescue 5 unborn babies. Any gift will help, and of course they're tax deductible. To donate, all you have to do is dial pound 250. And when prompted, the keyword is baby. That's pound 250, and the keyword is baby. Or go to Al Gore's Amazing Internet to preborn.com/plant. That's me. Preborn.com/plant. Yes, sir. I'd see our callers are the greatest callers, aren't they? I was talking to somebody yesterday about how I never said you never do guests. I said, well, I talk to real people. Those are the people I have on the show. Ilhan Omar, Democrat Congresswoman from Somalia, comparing the United States unfavorably to Somalia.